Thanks for joining me today. This is our
It's a pleasure.
inaugural
Oh my goodness.
OTW podcast.
Mm,
So
mm.
it's an honor to have you.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Drue.
Well, I kind of, I think so many of us know you as kind of a personality, a thought leader. Um, and so as I've gotten to know you more since, this past summer, I've just really just started to sort of unpack some of the depth behind who you are, and it's been really, really fun. And so I thought it'd be really interesting for other people to have the same opportunity that I've had because it's been a privilege. So um, I think just help me understand how you got your start, maybe some background about how you
Yeah.
how you were brought up and where you grew up and so forth.
Now I gotta say right off the top, I'm used to interviewing other people. I'm used to getting other people to talk about their background, and one person I've been pursuing for years is Hanson Yuan, who has been president of NAS, been part of all this stuff. He always deflects, and I just was talking to him this week, and again for the 100th time, I said, Hanson, I should interview you. He goes, Robin, I'm not important. So uh, so Drue, I really appreciate being asked to talk about your life and what influences you is actually a gift, and each person should experience it at least once in their life, have someone just listen to them. So Drue, thank you. You're really good. And so I'm gonna just start anywhere. So one thing that I try to do when I talk to people and people want to know about me is, unfortunately, and this is probably a bad habit, is I start off by throwing a curveball at them. And I do that for a reason. I don't like being boxed in. I don't like people thinking they kind of have me in a particular pattern. So I usually start by saying, I was born in Guatemala. And a lot of people think I'm kidding, but I'm not. I was born in Guatemala. And the reason I was born there is my parents were two kids who, my dad, an Irish guy, a poor Irish guy out of Pittsburgh. My mom, a newspaper editor out of Lamoni, Iowa. Two crazy kids. They decide they're going to hitchhike into Mexico and go as far as they can until the money runs out. It runs out in Guatemala City. My mom, because she's kind of very active in her church, her dad's a preacher, and you're going to find out in my life, my faith and all that means is a central aspect of who I am. I don't broadcast it, but it's in there. It's like the, part of the backbone. Anyway, so these crazy kids, my mom gets a job. My dad, who was a math teacher in Pittsburgh, junior high school math teacher, he gets a job at the American school. The State Department runs American school, so he goes to teach math, goes be like a junior principal. Well, at some point, after doing it for a year, they think, we got to go back, see our parents. We got to go, we've been gone for a while. They're kind of wondering how we're doing. So they buy a motorcycle, and they're going to ride two motorcycles. So they're going to ride motorcycles back. Now, you're in Guatemala, right? You got to go through the Darien Gap into Mexico.
Tell us what that is. What is the Darien Gap? I've never heard of it.
So the Pan American Highway is supposed to connect the U.S. down through Central America, but there's this section that they never built, even to this day, and it's pure jungle. So today, refugees coming up from Ecuador or wherever, they got to go through the Darien Gap. And that is a legendarily dangerous place to go. My parents motorcycled through the Darien Gap.
Wow. Okay.
Crazy kids. my dad, he was a Lieutenant JG in the Navy, handsome Navy guy. My mom's this newspaper editor. So anyway, they for years, they would tell the story about motorcycling up through Mexico.
How long did that take them?
Probably, and by the way, I think I was conceived on that trip. It probably took them about 3 or 4 months, is my guess. And so they get up there, sell the motorcycles, fly back, and then move to Cali, Colombia. So I was Latin initially. Spanish is my first language. And my mom, her family hooked up with a guy named Joseph Smith back in the day, up in Palmyra, New York. Went across the country. They're the original Latter-day Saints. When Joseph Smith was killed, my ancestors became part of one of the 13 religions that came out of that. The one we all know is Brigham Young in, Utah. My branch of that religion went to Minnesota. It's gone now. It's called the Cutlerites. The Cutlerites. And it had its own version of the Latter-day Saint. Now everyone knows it as the Mormon religion. But that's a big part of my upbringing, and actually is why my mom talked my dad into going south. Because a key element of the religion is that Jesus came to the Native American tribes in Central America, and it's it's the religion,
Right.
So I've got my dad's math ability and my mom's writing ability, and I was trying to find a living based on that, which was kind of a sort of a strange journey. I always loved Wall Street, and I always loved math. And I got my undergraduate degree in legal administration because I thought I could never, I wasn't sure what I could do with those skill sets. And I remember I was graduating from getting my undergrad degree from University of Minnesota, and I decided I'd try to get a job, as an analyst, Wall Street analyst. So I go to Piper Jaffray, and I got a streak of my dad in me, namely, my dad was born really poor, so he has kind of this don't put on airs with me kind of thing, and I have that too. So I go to Piper, I talk to the HR guy, and he goes, sorry, Robin, we only hire Ivy League graduates. Why don't you go find a job at a credit union? So I go, thanks. See you later, Chief.
Right.
So I go on for my MBA, and I'm working as an accountant for the Public Employees Retirement System in Minnesota. So and this is back when it was all manual accounting machines. These great big. That's how I learned it. And I had to balance out the books every month to the penny, and we're talking like millions of dollars. And I remember going to my boss going, "It's only a penny. Here, take it." Nope. You gotta find the penny. And I would spend hours finding this effing penny.
Wow.
But it was good training. It was very good training. And I learned a few accounting tricks along the way that would serve me well on Wall Street later. But anyway, so I start writing on the side. I just freelanced it. I'd work during the day and send out freelance articles. I got one published. I wrote the story of the Pillsbury Green Giant merger. It was the cover story in a local magazine in Minnesota.
And what year was that?
Now you're testing me.
Sorry. Circa.
Yeah, cut it out. Circa. So that would be let's see. Actually, I do know. it would be 1971. No, 74.
Okay.
1974. I am older than people realize.
Yeah.
Anyway, now home life, I married my high school girlfriend. I got married at 19, and she wasn't able to have kids, so I got involved with kids with disabilities and started out as a foster home for kids with all kinds of disabilities. My wife and I did.
Wow.
And we ended up adopting a little guy who's my son Scott, who has pretty severe cerebral palsy. And really, I really began to learn about the healthcare system, going with Scott to Gillette Children's Hospital and going through about 6 surgeries with him, and just learning the system and the dedicated nurses and surgeons and everybody. It was really a powerful experience for me. And raising Scott, teaching him. Now, Scott had been bounced through about 4 other foster homes before he came to us. He'd been injured in his life, had his bones broken by, no one intentionally did this, but anyway, so the state of Minnesota, he'd become a ward of the state, and we adopted him. The thing he was very afraid when he came to us, very shy, and our whole thing in his life was to just give him a lot of experiences and build confidence.
How old was he when you adopted him?
He was it's about 7 years old. So his little things, crossing the street, going to restaurants, ordering from a menu, all new stuff. But one thing that really sparked him was sports. And he'd listen to the Twins baseball games every night, going to sleep. We'd take him up to Lake Superior, and he and I would walk the breakwater and get waves crashing, but basically building confidence in himself. We mainstreamed him when he was in 5th grade, and we kind of forced the system to adapt to him. And he blossomed. Wow. He really did. And he became the first child of his biologic family to go to college. And he was the least likely one to go to college because he had this disability, his foster care.
Sure.
And so he goes to college, gets into Southwest State, calls me up. He's a city kid. Calls me up. Dad, I looked out the window. You never believe this. There's a cornfield right there, right under my window. There's a cornfield. I go, well, there you are. And this is a town with like 4 bars and 2 churches in the town. So he called him like, Dad, on his birthday, my buddies and I went out drinking last night. I got drunk. I fell into a snowdrift. I didn't feel a thing. It's amazing. You go, son. Oh, anyway. And I remember when we took him down there to meet with the counselor, go, look, disabled kids here, they tend to isolate. And my son goes, nah, I can walk across this campus right now, and I'll have 3 friends before I get to the end.
Wow.
He came completely out of his shell. So he drops out of college after 1 year, gets a job, gets an American Express card, buys and sells cars. And then he calls me up. All my friends are graduating. I want to go back.
Oh, my.
So he gets his degree in social work. Hates it. Because people are not, he's a self-sufficient guy, and he gets angry that people aren't, fighting and trying to make it. Anyway, so he's now in his 50s. He owned two houses for a while. He just sold one house. He owns his house. He just got married, got no mortgage. He's doing fine.
Wonderful.
And that's my boy.
Wow.
You know my daughter, Margaret. Anyway,
Well done.
sorry, I'd rather talk about my kids than myself. But I
Understand.
was raising him. But anyway, I'm writing the articles. I get a call from a little brokerage firm in town. We're looking for a junior analyst. They were underwriting these tiny little medical companies, what we would call in the trade POS companies.
Wow.
You know what that stands for?
I do. Yeah.
These were little tiny startups. We do the first round at 50 cents a share, private. Usually a doctor would call us up, say, I'm doing a study on this thing. It looks good. They need $200,000, so we do it for 50 cents a share. And everybody was the same. We would change the market cap to do that. And I was a junior analyst at the company, and I helped that happen. Next round was at $1, private. Then we go public at $3, and we controlled the float. So you had to make an appointment to buy the stock, and you have to come to us, and we controlled the market. That was those days. You can't get away with that today. That's not actually the way it should work. But in those days, it was very so. One of our little POS companies was a little company called St. Jude Medical.
Oh, wow.
We underwrote a little company called Cardiac Pacemakers. It became Boston Scientific. We got them all, and I grew up in that environment.
So this was Minnesota?
Minnesota.
So this was before Medical Alley was Medical Alley.
This was the start of Medical Alley, and I was in the middle of that.
Very cool. I did not know that.
So I was a POS analyst for about 3 years. I could get nothing right. Everything I recommended went the opposite direction. I remember going to my boss and I go, just let me go now. I'm embarrassed. He goes, Robin, I don't care if you get it wrong. Just don't be random. Be consistent. So if you're always wrong, we know how to make money. And thankfully, you're usually wrong.
It's like Jim Cramer.
You're good.
He's made a career out of it.
God bless. So no. I couldn't stand that. So I actually, I got my CFA and all that stuff. I actually really went to work trying to figure this out. It took me 3 years. I read everything. And I came to the conclusion that one guy kind of got it right. And that was Warren Buffett. But how do you apply Warren Buffett reasoning? He's a value guy. How do you apply that to medical technology? And that was the challenge. And
so what's the story? Tell us, dig into that a little bit. Super interesting.
So what I figured out is if you're looking at technologies, and I'm this way, I tend to fall in love with people and technologies. That's my weakness and my strength. If you follow that shiny object, that's where you're going to get yourself burned. You gotta figure out what is the real value proposition. So business is about solving problems. Let's start there. The essence of our business in treating patients, and we are all in the business of treating patients. I am, you are. It may not seem like it, but if you view your work that you do that way, no matter what you do, you'll be in sync with your industry, and you'll be way more effective. So anyway, I realized that when patients come to see their doctor and need help, first it's a sacred moment between doctor and patient, but second thing is, in economic terms, there's an inelasticity of demand. In other words, that patient has this very strong need and will and they won't really argue pricing over this to solve the problem. So the demand is not elastic, it's inelastic. Second thing is the business is based on patents that are issued and on getting reimbursement. So from an economic perspective, you have inelastic demand, you've got a monopoly in a patent, and you get a reimbursement code. So of course, the charging for that, you can charge a good price for it. And I saw that in the products. And indeed, especially in orthopedics, from about 1995 to 2005, there was an annual kind of you just baked in a 5% price increase every year, and nobody cared. And it was a good business. So I began to focus on cash flows. And that led me into the early stent business with Boston Scientific, SciMed Life Systems in the day, arterial vascular, the early stent guys, because they would make was essentially a big pen spring, a little spring out of metal that they could make for very little, even great engineering, and sell for $2,000. The margins, or the early BAK cage, that chunk of metal that Dave Stassen made, didn't cost him much. He was making so much money on that. He literally, because I'm pretty good at reading the numbers and financial statements, he was hiding his expenses. He's moving stuff out of the below the cost of goods line. He was moving it up into cost of goods, so people didn't realize how much money he was making. But that's what I started to look for. And once I changed my perspective from following the shiny object to following the cash flow, it changed everything.
How do you do that?
I get a series of hits, and
I'm interested in how you analyze a company that's earlier stage, because you don't have those fundamentals to measure.
That's correct. It's about the people. It's always about the people. And you see, I'm moving off the shiny object here. Even though I love those shiny objects and it's fun to describe them, and I get really enthusiastic. So if I'm looking at you, I'm going to ask myself, okay, what has he done, and what's his track record? Because I'm pretty confident that what you've done in the past, you'll do again. And you define yourself. When we first were talking, you talk about your experience in sales, and you never really have much of a doubt about your ability to do that. So I know you'll do it, or I'm pretty confident. Let me put it that way. And for me, my pattern is one, I look at the math. I'm pretty creative because I had so many unusual influences in my life. I never really stick with one frame of reference, because right away, my frame of reference in my life was originally Latin America. Then when I lived in New Mexico, my frame of reference was really, all my friends were Navajo, Hopi, Zuni. Then I lived in Canton, Ohio. My frame of reference was sort of Eastern European, because that's who I knew. So I don't get locked into a frame of reference. I'm always thinking to myself, okay, what problem am I actually solving here? And I realize if I can, I follow a kind of rule of 4 with problems. If I can solve your problem and it's worth $4 to you, and I'm only charging you $1, I got a business. So that's what I look for.
So you look for pattern recognition is essentially, it's pre-revenue, it's the people and the patterns of their history. And then if it's beyond that, now they're in the revenue state, then you can measure the other ones.
So I follow their pattern. What have they done in the past? Can they do it in the future? And then I look at what problem you're trying to solve. And are you solving a $4 problem for $1? I always use the rule of 4. And I always understand, and by the way, I've been around long enough, and a lot of people giving me their forecast. I don't think anyone has ever hit a forecast that I've ever worked with.
Never.
But I don't care.
Okay.
That's not my point. show me your direction. And if I believe in the direction, again, you're going to solve a $4 problem for $1. And we are in an industry that's inelastic demand. So I know if you solve a problem, a $4 problem for $1 in this industry, you will have traction because the patient is your customer. Yeah.
So let's just play this out. So you've got a $4 problem with a $2 cost. How does that change your thinking?
The problem with that, and the reason that doesn't work, is you've got a regulatory environment that's expensive. Once you get your regulatory approval, just getting into market is hard and also very expensive. So you need that cushion. If you don't have that cushion, you're going to be struggling for money constantly until you're finally worn to a nub and you give up.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
So, now one point, and I get attracted to unusual things again because my frame of reference is never fixed. I'm always looking at things from a lot of directions. So I kind of made my mark at Piper Jaffray, the guys who turned me down initially. I was at Craig Hallam. I became kind of like, I was the guy that everybody was quoting. I was the guy in all the newspapers because all those little POS companies turned out to be a lot of fun, really interesting, the news stories. So Piper comes back to me and goes, "Hey, Robin." They don't remember they turned me down before.
Okay.
"Hey, Robin, you want to be a vice president with us?" I go, "Hell yeah."
And you didn't bother to remind them that you didn't have a Ivy League education?
No. Not important. No, my education, I'm like the least likely to ever do this stuff. I come out of St. Thomas, little Catholic school, and I in the University of Minnesota, General College. No, I'm the guy that should be doing something very different. I should be running an insurance agency somewhere. But I end up, so they go, "Hey, Robin, come be our vice president." I said, "Yeah, no problem." But they didn't want to give me medical companies.
Wow.
Okay, that's fine. So I go around to all the other analysts and I say, what are you covering you don't like? So really, again, I'm going after the POS companies because I believe in them. So I get a little toy company that the analyst hates. I got a little, ring, a company that made rings. I got a paper mill company. So the toy company was Tonka Toys.
Oh, wow.
And they just introduced a product called the Pound Puppies. And I take that stock. Guess what? It quadruples in the first year. And I became a Pound Puppy expert, toy expert. And I get on Wall Street Week with Louis Rukeyser to talk about toy companies.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm following this company that makes rings. It's called Jostens.
Oh, my.
And they make the Super Bowl rings.
Yeah.
Guess what happens? So after my first year, I'm the number one performing analyst because I take everybody else's crap. And I know this about this job. If you're an analyst, you get stuck in your industry and things go in cycles. And some companies are down on their luck, but guess what? You pick them up. So there's one rule in investing. Okay, get ready. Buy low, sell high.
It's a novel idea.
So I get these companies at their low mark, and I'm the number one analyst in the next year, covering paper mills, Jostens, Phillips Check, Tonka Toys.
Oh, wow.
So I get a call from another brokerage firm. "Hey, you want to be our director of research?" Now, this is my 4th year as an analyst. Now I'm a director of research. So I say, "Sure. What the hell?" So I help a little company called John Kennard get to be a high profile company. And I get kind of, after my 6th year, I'm kind of tired of this. So I have another bright idea. I want to start. There's a problem I'm spotting. I hate these polystyrene packing peanuts.
Huh.
So I decided I'm going to go start a packing peanut company, make them out of like corn or wheat.
You are going to do this? You're starting it?
I did it.
Wow.
I started that. I raised the money, called Environmental Technologies, and we made the first starch-based packing peanut, and today it is the number one. This is back in the 1990s. It is the number one biodegradable packing peanut in the United States today.
Wow.
So that was like a 3-year hiatus.
Uh-huh.
Sold
Now,
the company.
did you operate the company?
I was the CEO. I learned all about manufacturing and scale up and got 7 patents.
Unbelievable.
So I go back on Wall Street, and back in the day, I had raised money for a company that made totalizators for racetracks. So a totalizator is a machine that calculates the odds in a horse race.
Oh, wow.
And I have this theory that the name was given to this machine by some guy out of New Jersey who said, I asked, what does that do? And so, well, it's a totalizator. So it was a little guy out of Billings, Montana, a rancher who raised racehorses that would take his horses to tracks, and they would manually figure out the odds in those days. And his son learned computers in San Diego back this early on, and he figured out how to take a PC, an IBM PC, and daisy chain it so it would do all the calculations. Because in those days, they would use anyway, it changed the game in horse racing. So I'd raise money for this company when I was at Piper. Anyway, I sell my packing peanut business. So I get a call from the Arkansas company that was the co-underwriter on this totalizator deal because they liked working with me. We're looking for a medical analyst. Now, this was a company that had underwritten Walmart. They had $6 billion in assets. They had $600 million a year they were trying to reinvest. And they had just underwritten Rick Scott of HCA. And Rick had said, boys, you need to get in this medical technology business. It's a good business. So they were like, well, who knows this industry? And someone said, you got to call Robin Young. So I said, okay. So everybody in Minnesota is like, why are you moving to Arkansas from Minnesota? You guys don't understand. So I go down to Arkansas. And anyway, I became, I made a big name for myself down there following med tech. Anyway.
What was the name of that company?
Called Stevens.
Yeah. Okay. Just Stevens.
Yeah. It was the Stevens family.
Okay.
Again.
Was it a family office or what?
Yeah. Well, it was, they're one of the most highly regarded, in my opinion, one of those highly regarded, ethical, successful investment banks in the United States. And they partner with everybody. And they, they're just so well regarded. It's Warren Stevens, who, by the way, is just been nominated as the ambassador to Britain by Donald Trump.
Wow.
Warren Stevens. I work for Warren.
Amazing.
And I loved it. I loved that company so much. I mean, talk about integrity, doing everything the right way. So I worked for a guy named Jim Jacoby and his uncle John. John played bridge with Warren Buffett. They have a value approach to everything they do. People with value, integrity, value investing. And it fit me personally very well. And I just thrived there. I ended up running a whole group covering all of life science. We had a big oncology group. So I learned a lot about how things work. I was recruited to go to, they were trying to recruit me to go to New York, and my wife wouldn't do New York. No offense. Sorry, New York. But no, I was
You're not
recruited
easy to offend, New York.
I was recruited to help start the Health Point Capital. And so it was
Park
Foster and
Avenue.
me. Yeah, I was kind of like the domain expert, and I'm supposed to know orthopedics really well. And we were going to try to do a deal, try to do all this with Mark, Tony, and John Viscogliosi. And we almost got it put together. And then John Foster, who was the founder, said, nah, we're going to go on our own. So Health Point Capital is now in the same building as the V Brothers, just one floor below. Yeah. It's a shame, but in a way, it is what it is, and probably what the way things should have turned out.
Yeah.
But I'm not a New York guy. I'm just not. I tell everybody I'm don't put on airs with me, please. Just be authentic. And so I started publications. I basically quit Health Point after about 3 years because I just didn't like the New York culture. No, I really don't mean to offend anybody, but
So Robin, when did you start covering orthopedics and spine? When did that happen? Was that at Stevens or was that after?
That I started? So I started that at Stevens. Now I was kind of the cardiovascular guy, and remember I said earlier that in Wall Street things go in cycles. And you remember my first big hit was picking up down companies. So I'm very aware that cardiovascular, when the drug-coated stents came out, was peaking, and I knew it. So I'm looking around for another down, something that's just not, people aren't watching, aren't paying attention to, underappreciated, underserved, all that. And I like being the monopoly in a market. I want to always be the top, the one that captures all the oxygen in the room. I really do. So I knew cardio was peaking, and I went to two directions. One was oncology, and we jumped on Herceptin. I hired the oncology, the top oncology researcher out of Eli Lilly in Indiana. I recruited him. I got him. And he made us we were the lead analyst on Wall Street for Herceptin and this new generation of oncology products. And the other area I was looking at was this really bad, nobody paid any attention to orthopedics except for Tony Viscogliosi, who I admire hugely. And I remember tracking that guy down, and I sat him down and said, I got to tell you, Tony, I'm a huge admirer because I think I think he was absolutely right about his view on orthopedics, but he was the only one. He and his brothers were the only guys, and I knew I had an opportunity. And again, I wanted to kind of be the main guy. So I took orthopedics on and just, I went all over Europe talking about orthopedics. I put the Rothschilds into spine tech. I was putting investors out of Italy, France, UK into these young companies and making the case, and sophomore Danik. And my case was always the same. Look at the cash flow. Look at those margins. Sophomore Danik was returning 20% on equity, 20% operating margin. It was like the 20-20-20 company. Cash machine. Same for spine tech. Cash machine. Arteriovascular. Cash machine. And some of them bought, some didn't. But that's how I got started. And so When John Foster wanted to start Health Point Capital, it was the V brothers who said, you got to talk to Robin Young in Arkansas.
Mm.
And ended up living outside of Philadelphia and commuting every day. And by the way, I commuted every day. I was always the first one in the office.
Where did you commute to? To Park Avenue? Or
Yeah,
where?
I commuted from outside of Philly to Park Avenue, and I'd always be the first one in.
Wow.
Well,
What time did you have to leave in the morning to get there?
6 a.m., but
Okay, that's not
who
so.
cares?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that's all right. So that's how I started. I did the orthopedics, got started just because it was nobody's paying attention to it. It was underfollowed, a lot of opportunity, a lot of money was going to be made here. I knew it. And now, of course, I'm kind of married to orthopedics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what inspired you to start Orthopedics This week?
Well, I'm basically a writer at heart, and it comes from my background. I mean, I've got probably 6 generations of writers behind me. So I'm a writer. I like telling stories. I really value deeply the people in this industry, you and all the doctors and everybody I work with. Part of the reason I write the history is I just think everyone is just so valuable. I just got to tell their stories. So I'm a writer, and one of the ways, that whole experience of deciding to be part of this New York private equity firm and then deciding to leave it, it was kind of therapeutic to just get back to writing about stuff I care about. I had 1,400 readers when I started, kind of like a blog, and it just grew. It just grew and grew and grew. And today, we are the largest publisher in terms of readership and influence.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm basically still doing what I love to do.
Yeah.
Just seeing what's going on, writing about it, explaining it from my perspective, what's happening. And that's why I do the top technologies every year
Mm-hmm.
and think a lot about how things are changing. Are we solving problems? Are we doing it in an economic way?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I did it.
Yeah. So just a little bit more about that. So how do you decide what you write about? Because you're very selective and kind of careful about the content. And what goes into your thought process?
I want to have news. I want to tell people things they don't know. I want to convey information that a surgeon can use in their practice. I want something to help salesmen. So if you can take what I put out and you can use that to help you open the door to a client, tell a surgeon something they don't already know, be of service. Because if you can serve that surgeon well, help that surgeon do a better job with their patient, you're elevating yourself, the surgeon, the patient. It's all good.
Right.
And so that's what I'm trying to do. People matter a lot. I just found out that Ramon Castillo passed away. He's Castillo of the Castillo, and he's a very important guy that people may not be aware of. So I'm working on a story about him.
Yeah.
Sean
Very colorful
Collins.
guy. I remember him
Yeah.
from my days at Zimmer.
Very, very important person.
Yeah.
The other things that I'm watching these days, I'm paying a lot of attention to what's going on with AI. So one of the puzzles I have is how does AI work its way into orthopedics?
Mm-hmm.
It's a flawed, AI is flawed.
Mm-hmm.
AI has issues. Predictive AI makes a lot of wrong predictions.
Yeah.
Generative AI, can be misused.
Mm-hmm.
So I am excited and fascinated by how it's figuring its way in. I, I view innovation as a river that is always changing course. It never stops.
Mm-hmm.
It just comes at things in different directions. So I'm really interested in how AI, what that channel, how that's coming in. And the way I think I see it coming in is as a good triage product. Now, it'll also help out on billing because these clinics they have too many contracts, sorting them out. There's bound to be mistakes. AI can help solve that. But I'm intrigued with how AI is going to be used for triaging. And I have two examples. There's a company out of Toronto, Canada right now that is using AI to read a standard x-ray to figure out if a bone is osteopenic or osteoporotic. And they're basically giving that away to a hospital and or a clinic, and you run all your x-rays through that system. Just run it through. It won't cost you a dime. Just when you take an x-ray of any patient, put it into this system, it will flag the x-rays that need a DEXA scan. And for that, you can charge $200.
Right.
So suddenly, here's an AI triage tool that isn't really predicting, but it's helping you do a better job of, first of all, generating more revenue, but treating your patients. And the other one I like is this AI tool to help take 10 years of spine studies on what causes pain in backs, boil it down to maybe a dozen insightful questions.
Yeah.
And now you're going to be a more productive spine surgeon. Instead of seeing 6 patients get one surgery patient, now with this little simple system, you only need to see 3 patients to get a paying customer.
Yeah.
You can double your revenue with that.
That's so needed too, with just where we're headed in terms of the surgeon shortage. That'll really be helpful because you don't need a surgeon to see every patient clearly.
Or you can have the patient do it at home, fill out the questionnaire at home. But it's a smart questionnaire that really is 10 years of good clinical data. I mean, who reads their journal anymore? The doctor isn't keeping up on what's in the journals. This AI program is going to have all that. 10 years of journal studies in that program and boiled into 12 insightful questions that will be pretty good at figuring out where this patient should go.
Yeah. Another use of AI that I've seen used in a variety of ways is for documentation in the clinic. And, you see these ones that listen in and just capture all of the content and try to decipher what's actually, material to the notes. And
that's huge.
That's it. I've heard a lot of mixed reviews on not just accuracy, but just there's just a lot of information.
It's an ugly duckling right now, but that is a swan. That's a future swan, I guarantee it.
There's one company that an orthopedic surgeon has built platform called Tempeda, which integrates ChatGPT and takes the notes and makes it really fast. So you're 10 seconds with a patient or taking notes for about 10 seconds, and then it creates and then it automatically does all the clicking for you. So you walk away from your terminal and it clicks and pastes and does all the final touches that would take you 2 minutes. So if you're saving 2 minutes per patient, you see 40, 50 patients a day. I mean, that's a meaningful time savings.
Again, it's a $1 product. It's going to be worth $4 to you.
Yeah.
And if they can connect that to also figure out the reimbursement codes.
Yeah. That's the holy grail, right? I mean, if you can get that,
you betcha.
Yeah.
You betcha. No, so that gets me excited. I get up in the morning and go, oh, that is so cool. Let me write about that. Yeah. So that's how I think about what I write in those terms, just like you got excited, you see it too, and get the word out. That's the fun part.
So you basically will amplify the cool stuff and ignore the rest.
It's tough to ignore the rest because people fall in love with what they do, and I feel for them. I do. I get the same way. I get excited. It's tough to tell someone that's really cool, but it's not going to solve a $4 problem for a buck.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I like to be supportive. I really do. I want, but not everyone is going to make it.
Yeah, for sure. So, so Robin, what are some of the things that along the journey that have been most impactful or most impressive or that really stand out in your mind?
I think for me, I think writing this history of spine surgery was really, I learned so much from that. Oh, oh
I've got
yeah.
two of them right here.
Oh, you're the best. Thank you. Well, they're not written as well as I would like, but I have to say, I learned a lot from writing the story and talking to Ronnie Pickard, Kevin Foley, Alan Olson. And a couple good lessons that came from that. First of all, it astonishes me how many right decisions Ronnie Pickard made. Now I go back to when I applied at Piper, and I was told we only hire Ivy League graduates. So maybe I'm too sympathetic with this point. So I'm probably bashing this point too much. Ronnie didn't go to college. His mentor, L.D. Beard, didn't go to college. What they did know is they knew how to ask a lot of questions. They knew how to listen carefully. They knew how to work really hard. They and so here we have a case of a new generation of biotechnology that all of these PhDs are working on. And they figured out how they can synthesize proteins. Ronnie Pickard figured out that was something he should pursue. How did he figure that out? What was in his background that told him that was the way to go? Well, he listened carefully to guys like Kevin Foley and the surgeons, and he really listened and heard what they were telling him. And so he went for it, put down $50 million he didn't have, got the rights to BMP2, and the rest is history. They are still the dominant supplier of BMP2, going to do $600 million this year.
Yeah.
The other one, how the heck did he figure out surgical navigation in the 1990s? And it would be 10 more years before anyone else figured out how important that is. So today, you go into an operating room, you have a dozen computers, you've got AI going, you've got screens everywhere. You're like in this, starship. Ronnie Pickard, Kevin Foley, the guys, they made so many right. So in writing their stories, I learned a lot about how to evaluate things, how to be more of a, funny for me to say this, how to be more of a listener than a talker, which I'm not really. And maybe being a little humble, and trying to figure out how you're going to solve a problem for your surgeon. And the other thing Ronnie said, and the whole crew said, and you can see this culture moving in. It went into NuVasive, it went into C-Spine, it went into Alpha Tech. That the culture is the surgeon is number one. Everything is about that. Ronnie tells a story. He told everyone in the organization, you absolutely, positively, without fail, have to meet the surgeon's needs, whatever it is. And there was a case, his secretary came to see him and said, Mr. Pickard, I hope you won't be upset, but a surgeon in California needed this instrument set for a surgery today. I end up spending $10,000 to hire a private jet to get it to him. I hope you don't mind. And Ronnie said, that's fine.
Wow.
Because if that serving the surgeon is your number one priority, that's what you do.
Wow.
Number
Yeah.
one means number one.
Right.
Number one is not number two.
Yeah. There's
That's
no
your
asterisk.
first priority. Even turning a profit that quarter
Yeah.
is not number one.
Hmm.
Take care of the surgeon. So you'll see, so what you do is you listen to the surgeon. If you listen carefully, what do they need? How can you help?
Yeah. No, that's huge. Yeah, and I don't think you have a bias that's overrepresented in that statement about education, because I mean, you don't have to look far to see the Steve Jobs and, Bill Gates. There's there's countless examples of super successful people that didn't see value in a formal college education.
Yeah. Hey, look, education's extremely important. I'm a big fan.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. Some just kind of in general terms of running a an online magazine.
Mm.
What was that like? You've done it for 19 years, and what is that? First of all, what has it opened up for you in terms of opportunity?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. It's given me the opportunity to get to know wonderful people, and I go to the meetings. I've learned so much from guys like Alex Vaccaro, Todd Anders, Albert rather, and Hanson Yuan, and I know I'm missing a lot of Jeff Wang, Josh Jacobs, these amazing people. Um, uh, I would not have been able to spend time with them had I not done this, and it's been a blessing, of a huge impact.
Mm.
So so if nothing else, if I end what I'm doing, tomorrow, that'll be my takeaway. So these are people that have dedicated their lives to improving other people's lives. When I wrote that book, The Greatest Generation, there's one guy in there that just stuck out. And by the way, this greatest generation, you don't have to be a nationally known person. If you're the guy in Texarkana that took care of everyone in Texarkana with hips and knees and whatever, you're a hero. But there was one person who became really well known on the East Coast, headed up a department, wonderful career as a surgeon. He retires, he goes into seminary. He becomes a seminarian after he retires from healing people, physically healing
Uh-huh.
people. He then spends the rest of his life healing people spiritually.
I love it.
I do too.
That's beautiful.
It is. It is. And I'm like, chokes me up just thinking about it.
Sure.
He truly so it's the Christmas season. There's this, It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey. He's standing on the bridge. He's gonna throw himself in the water because he feels he's failed everybody. And Clarence, who wants to be an angel, shows him what his town would have been like if he had not lived, and it was much worse.
Mm-hmm.
And he discovers that what he does in his life benefits so many people. At the end of that movie, Clarence gets his wings, a new angel is made, and a bell goes off. When this doctor passed away, I know a bell went off, and I know there was a new angel made in heaven.
Huh. Yeah, I think it's really not fully appreciated. The extent. We think about how much money the surgeons make, but we don't really ponder the extent of the sacrifices that are made, and not just in the extensive education, but in the disruption to what could otherwise be a really normal family life. And as a son of a physician who did high risk anesthesia, when you're a kid going through whatever it is that's happening in your life, and you're competing against patients who are on their deathbed, and it's your dad that's saving them, it puts things in perspective. And I think a lot of times, we really misattribute a lot of what these physicians go through in their lives, because they are disrupting, they are putting family at the side, because the need is so great and it's so urgent and acute. And I just don't think that's really appreciated.
No.
I think a lot of criticism is given, and not a lot of appreciation for the sacrifice personally that they go through.
So Drue, in your life, how did you work your way through those situations?
Um, for me, I grew up, it was normal. So just not having my dad around a lot it was normal life. So I didn't have anything to compare it to. So it wasn't like I was disappointed. But on Sunday nights, back when they used to pre-op patients the night before, I would go to the hospital with my dad, and we'd alternate. I had a brother and a sister. And so, once a month or every 3 weeks, I'd get to go, and, I'd sit at the nurses' station and talk to the nurses and meet doctors. And, I was exposed enough to it that I appreciated the gravity of the situation and the seriousness of the illness that my dad was helping to solve, or to, abate, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a healthy respect for the fact that, my dad was making sacrifices, and we as a family made sacrifices, and it was acceptable because it was for the benefit of the patient.
Well, there's a cost that's paid for doing this. You take a lot on your shoulders.
Yeah. And I think that's true. I mean, even down to the sales rep. I mean,
Oh yeah.
anybody who's taken call for days on end or weeks on end, you realize that everything else is subjugated. If I would be at, going to dinner with my wife, many times we left a movie early, because the pager went off. I would go to church. We'd take 2 cars. I had 4 kids at home, so it didn't make sense to rip everybody out. I couldn't be quick enough, so I had to run to the office, pick up whatever was needed, and then off to the hospital. So, those are just sacrifices that you make, and I think it's a small part, because we don't carry the personal sort of anxiety of the responsibility of treating the patient going through that. So yeah, I think there's a lot of that goes around, and a lot of people sacrifice a lot for the good of the patient, and that's ultimately, to your earliest point, I think you made, is really all about the patient. And if you're serving a physician and the staff in a hospital to the betterment of the patient, I mean, you're really doing a good thing.
By doing your job well, you're taking the burden off the surgeon so he can do, or she can do, her job well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a team. It's a team. It's a team. It is, and there's no, the one thing I really object to, and I've heard this from folks who don't really know any better, or should know better, but refuse to do it. They don't understand how all the people fit into a system. The sales rep, the distributor, everybody contributes. And when everybody's kind of, fitting in and doing their thing and doing the best they can, it's a beautiful thing. It just works.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so you asked what the highlight really is, meeting people like you, but so many others as well, who are part of this wonderful industry, this system, and we're all teamed up to help that patient. And I think for me, raising kid who with a lot of health issues, you know, it helps inform who I am and how I view what now we do, you and me both.
Yeah. No, that's great. What would your advice be to people, either, younger physicians, younger industry people? What advice would you have for them?
Hmm. Stay focused on the prize. You're you're gonna see a lot of new gizmos come at you, a lot of new technologies, a lot of things. At the end of the day, it's always about taking care of that patient. It's just stay focused on the prize. Um, it, I don't know. I just say in my life, there were no straight lines, and I could never have predicted this is how my life would have turned out. There's just no straight lines, and I think in the human body, there's no straight lines. In careers, there's no straight lines. Um, at the end of the day, try to figure out who you are, where your greatest contribution is. Be patient with yourself, work your ass off. Try to be a good team member, if at all possible. It may be hard, but give it your best shot. So you support the folks who are around you, so that as a group, you are elevated and you elevate. Um, I don't know. Maybe it goes back to all the basics, right? Hard work, listen more than get 2 ears, one mouth. Um, I guess that's about, maybe have a sense of humor. So, for example, hold on. So I ran the stem cell summit for a while.
Yeah.
We started that. So I thought it was funny. Stem cells were a little controversial. So we handed out stem cell dispensers.
Nice.
I mean,
That's
and of
good.
course, handmade in the Ozarks. Hello.
Oh, nice.
Just,
Does it work when you crank it?
of course it does. Are you
Okay.
kidding me? It's
Nice.
made by a good Ozarkian.
Nice. Oh, there it is. Very nice.
But
So,
that's kind of it, my friend. Yes.
well, let me just turn it maybe a little bit over to the OTW side of things, a little bit more, just to provide some insight. You've been running the company for 19 years, the publication. What are some of the most bizarre, or, I don't know, unusual things that you've encountered over the years? I know you've stirred up some controversies, so unintentionally, I'm sure.
No.
But
No.
what's some of the more unusual or bizarre things that have happened as a result?
Probably the biggest controversy was when I really objected to the Spine Journal devoting the entire issue to bashing bone morphogenic proteins, specifically Infuse, and really targeted Medtronic specifically. I felt that was a violation of the editor's duty to be scientifically objective. And as I dug into that issue, and I did, look, I actually read the references. So if you put a study up there, I'll check your references. It goes back to when I learned I had to close the books down to the penny and spend as much time as required to find that frickin' penny.
Wow.
So I will read the references. So I dug into the studies that editor of the journal cited, and I found he did not include key parts of some of the studies. He actually cherry-picked elements of a study without checking all of it to prove his pre-existing point. It was a classic case of confirmation bias, classic case of a hit job, and everybody was really intimidated by what this guy did. I was not.
Mm-hmm.
I went after him with both barrels. unapologetically and I used my platform. And I just came at him because you do not violate this trust that a journal needs to have with its readers.
Mm-hmm.
You must be objective. Personal opinion doesn't matter.
Uh-huh.
Unfortunately, the Spine Journal was really hurt by that reputationally.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I was unapologetic about fighting on behalf of what I consider to be objective research. If you and that because I'm pretty persistent, I couldn't understand how a journal editor could get away with this. And the journal publisher was Elsevier. Why didn't Elsevier come back and say to this guy, okay, you cherry pick stuff here. You purposely skewed this information to the doctors who rely on this. You can't be editor anymore as a minimum, but they didn't do that. There was no mechanism to police this. That in turn sent me down a rabbit hole of trying to understand the system for publishing research. And I figured out the system doesn't serve the research community, and that's now got me down this whole thing of working on a co-op and new ways of publishing research. But
Can you talk about that?
With that.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that the current system, which there's about 8 million studies done every year in life sciences around the world, and about 60% of that research has never seen the light of day. It gets rejected for good reason, some not for good reason. If you are accepted, you've got to pay a fee to get published now. And that's really a function of 20 years ago, a thing called the internet, which kind of destroyed most publishing. But now those publishers, because they're charging and the individual researcher has got to pay $2,500 on average, as much as $11,000 to get into the big journals, they made $13 billion last year. They're making 25% profit margins. It's
other people's work.
And the researcher has to sign away all the rights. So you know what this reminds me of? Back in the 60s and 70s, and maybe even before then, if you were a songwriter, if you were the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, or Billy Joel, you had to sign away the rights to your work to get distribution. I mean, Prince had to sign away his very name. He couldn't use his own name. And then Spotify shows up and everything changes. Well, I think research needs a Spotify. Research needs to have, and I think a cooperative of researchers is the way to go, where you put up your work and you can share it with colleagues. You don't need to pay a fee. You can get access to new information. You can become a better researcher, all that kind of stuff. And, a very famous researcher once said, I spent 20 years going from failure to failure to reach one success. That one success was a Nobel Prize. He had 20 years of failure, but each failure is a new paper. It's a study, because you need to communicate what worked and didn't work with your colleagues. That's how we learn.
That's science.
Science.
Right. Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
You don't. So he would, if he was today, he'd send his study in to get published. He'd get turned down 60% of the time. Nobody would learn it because it was a failure.
But we learn more from our failures many times than we do from our successes.
Hopefully. Yes. No.
Yeah, true. Fair point.
Well, we're only human.
Right.
But that's right. That's right. That's right. And so, anyway, my friend, thank you for asking the question.
So let me ask you this, just further to that point. So a co-op, what's the vehicle? How do you house and manage the content for this ambitious goal?
Well, same way Spotify manages its content. So a co-op is you become a member. So great co-ops, USAA, great co-op, TIA Creft, great co-op, Land O'Lakes, great co-op. So you become a member of a co-op. Profits, you get profits come back to you. And if you're in a dairy co-op, you can get services, you can get, cow feed, you can get, machines, all at good pricing because it's like a big buying group. So for researchers, that means you can get data a lot cheaper. Right now, if you want to get data, you got to pay 20 grand. If you're in a co-op, you can get it for a couple $100.
Mm-hmm.
Big price difference. You get access to colleagues around the world. If you're studying the microbiome gut, maybe there's a researcher in Chile that you want to talk to or wherever. You're on a co-op. Now you've got something you want to publish. Yeah, you had a failure, but you learned something. You could probably get 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 other researchers to take a look at that and learn from that through a co-op. No charge. And the co-op can just push it out to them.
So are you going to focus on a specific specialty first?
No, it's open to everybody. All researchers.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, that'll be fun to see how that goes.
I don't know. Maybe I'm getting too old for this stuff. I just don't know.
So you're Ask Charnley. You're very entrepreneurial and very creative. You come up with a lot of different ideas. I remember the one Ask Charnley that you sort of tested, and then talk about what that was.
So that was I wanted to learn more about ChatGPT-3 and how that might work for mining information. So OTW, as you know, we've created 20,000 articles or something over the years. A lot of information in there. So Ask Charlie mined all that information and returned it. What I found is that Ask Charlie liked to hallucinate a little bit. And so to stop the hallucinations, you had to narrow it down way too much. So it really wasn't giving you anything insightful. So I killed it. I said, nice try. I learned a lot. That's a failure.
Sure.
But I understand how these programs work now.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe strongly in the ugly duckling. Innovation is like an ugly duckling. The first iteration, just trust me, it'll be a swan. Just need a few more iterations.
Mm-hmm. So how did you, because you scrapped the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So fail fast for you,
right.
In this case, what didn't turn into a pivot.
No.
So generally what you see a lot of times is that they'll just go, well, that didn't work. Let's iterate. Let's switch to a different, solution.
Well,
I'd like to know just, your decision making.
Right. You have to have a use case. Remember earlier, you got to solve a $4 problem for $1. I couldn't identify a $4 problem that Ask Charlie solved. You need a use case. So now with the co-op, I'm identifying a $2,500 problem that I'm solving for about $300. And I'm going to deliver another 10,000 of value in other forms of terms of data and other things. You gotta find a use case, or another way of saying it, a $4 problem.
So not a solution looking for a problem.
That was a solution looking for a problem.
Yeah.
Ask Charlie was a solution looking for a problem. You bet.
There's a number of those in the orthopedic marketplace.
We fall in love with our babies. What can you say? And I hate to be the one to say, your baby's not that good looking.
Right.
Sorry.
Right. Yeah. But I think you do people a disservice by just sort of telling them what they want to hear.
That's true.
But sadly, a lot of people do that.
That is true. And I celebrate, I know you do the same way. We celebrate this innovative urge, this passion. And I really admire passion and all that. And but it's, it is a school of hard knocks too.
For sure. Yeah, no doubt. Well, I've got a lot of questions from people just in general as I talked to a bunch of people asking about this acquisition, this OTW acquisition, and what was behind it. Nobody saw it coming, and I thought maybe just a great way to sort of clear the air for people. The first thing I'll say is I'm thrilled that you've agreed to stay on in the capacity of editor emeritus, where you will still drive the content and continue to write great informational pieces and provocative pieces. And but the sort of the why behind it, I think it might just be nice to give some people a little bit of insight.
Yeah. So I was getting worn down with all of the administrative sales stuff. It's really, I can do it for a while, but I can't do it consistently. I'm really much better at writing articles and doing that. I really am. And I was kind of signaling this over the last 3 or 4 years, and I was putting money into the company to keep it going. And I finally reached a point where I couldn't keep doing it. So I kind of let everybody know this is the last year. Everyone in the company first, and then slowly outside the company. And I was going to wind it down at the end of this month, actually by tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And you stepped up. You stepped up. And I'm so grateful that you did. Because number one, not only do you and I are very much in sync. We have a symmetry. We view what we do. Well, we're bald. This first.
True.
But we have similar values, and we look at this, our role in life and in this industry in similar ways. And you're really good at what you do. You're wonderful at it. And you have so many skill sets I don't. So I knew that OTW would be in great hands with you, that you would look at it with fresh eyes and look at it in ways that will help ensure its economic future. I am delighted to be doing what I love to do, which is writing and hobnobbing and figuring out what's going on and putting it out. I don't want to be controversial, but on the other hand, I want to have information, new information.
Sure. I think that a lot of people try to walk a tightrope to not offend anybody, and end up doing a disservice to the community, because there are some decisions and some positions that people really should take. Like the example you gave about Spine Journal. I mean, that's one of them where if nobody calls out that sort of, grievance, that misbehavior, then it's just sort of, I think it just sort of continues down that path, and it keeps people in check. I think I think it's a necessary responsibility when you're in the position that you are in, which you're clearly a thought leader in this orthopedic and spine market. People respect your opinions, though they don't always agree, and that's okay. And
absolutely.
And so, my whole, when you and I first spoke about it, and you let me know about your decision to shut it down, it was really just a firm belief in the service that this publication provides to the community, the voice it has, the reach. I mean, I felt a duty, quite frankly, to do what I can do to continue its legacy, maintain your legacy, and allow you to continue to do what you do best. There's no one like you in this space. And so you have a unique position, and I'm honored to be part of enabling you to continue to hold that position and to lead the way in that way. So, so I'm really, that is a privilege for me, and hopefully we can continue to iterate and modify
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
update. Hopefully, we'll be launching a new website in the near term. Our goal is, we really serve surgeons and physicians
Mm-hmm.
first,
Yep.
but by extension, we also serve the industry,
Mm-hmm.
and we want to provide meaningful content that informs and equips.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll continue to do that, Lord willing.
And exactly right. And I think we're going to be including new voices, interesting voices, and I hope keep building on all that. And again, you're the person who's leading the way. You really are.
Well, I
Um,
do think that as we move into the future of OTW, I really do want to start to focus on some of those other voices that
Mhm.
are really speaking to what our healthcare system has devolved into, which is a bunch of middlemen, entities extracting the needed capital from, we kind of see both
Mhm.
ends, the providers or the
Mhm.
physicians and the hospitals tend to be struggling, with some exceptions, with this big swath of space in the middle that's just gobbled up by these healthcare companies. And I think it's finally coming to a point. I think it's hit a boiling point. We saw a little bit with the assassination of the United Healthcare CEO, which is tragic. Um, but I think it's just I think even aside from that, I think that's more representative of what was already happening, which was a lot of people just getting kind of fed up with the state of healthcare. Physicians seeing their reimbursements continue to go down while our premiums and our
It's unbelievable.
deductibles are going up. So we do need voices that really challenge that, because that's not right. It's
That's
not
right. That's
it's
right.
not a good we're not in a good place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, we can articulate that, and we can offer solutions, not just complaining.
Yeah.
We'll offer solutions too.
Yeah, I think so. Um so I'm excited about some of that, and also looking at some of the ways to help physicians to Elizabeth Hoffhines wrote an article recently about physicians using social media
Mm-hmm.
and how there are some pitfalls if you're not careful. But I do think that we're now at a day and age when it's okay. And we see some champions of kind of the DOL, digital opinion leader, that Matthew Ray Scott really champions,
That's right.
and Scott Sigman. I think they're doing a lot of really good
That's
things,
right.
and I'd like to see more instruction and coaching for
Mm-hmm.
physicians, as well as
Mm-hmm.
some financial advice. A lot of these guys come out of school and deep in debt, and um, and not a lot of advice or coaching on how to get that sort of house in order and sort of plan for what hopefully is a long career. But if it isn't, then make sure that they've placed their bets nicely and wisely. So those are some of the things that we like to do, um, and we're open to other suggestions as well.
These are valuable topics, and these are again ways of helping surgeons navigate what they're going through better. Uh, that's what we're here for. Just like Ronnie Pickard said, they're number one customer, whatever they need.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and main thing, make sure you give them something new.
Yeah.
Don't waste their
Yeah.
time.
And then to not leave industry out.
Yeah.
Um, I think a phenomenon that we all witnessed, a decade ago, was the spine blogger. And you
Oh,
and I talked about that recently.
yes.
And what was interesting about spine blogger um, was that there was a lot of engagement. It was huge, a lot of creative sort of approach to and analysis of industry. And, I'm not sure I would have done it the same way. I certainly wouldn't have, but it created quite a stir. And
He said what a lot of folks thought. They may be
exactly.
wrong, but that articulating those unspoken thoughts And look, you know, uh, I was the target. Other people were the target. But, I read it. I honestly appreciated it. I didn't agree with everything. I felt it a little bit too barbed, a
Mm-hmm.
little too personal,
Yeah.
but it was fun to read. Everybody
Yeah.
read it.
Yeah, for sure. And I won't disclose the identity of the spine blogger, but
Well, I think we did. We did write an article. We
oh, you
wrote an
did?
article about who is the spine blogger. Yeah, so you can look it
Well,
up.
I reached out to him
Yes,
um, earlier this month to
yes,
just see what he's up to.
yes,
Spent a good bit of time, at least an hour on the phone,
yes.
um, just seeing what he's done. And he's retired now. And but uh, but I do think that a watered down version of that kind of engagement, I think, is healthy friction.
You agree. I
And so
agree.
I'm hoping that we will be able to bring in on the back end, not the front end where anybody can comment. But I think part of the problem with that was the anonymous nature of the comments brought out the worst in people.
True.
And so I think if we have a login and we know who you are, and you have to be, because nobody would say the things that they were saying if they had to look someone in the eye.
Well, that's true. Yes, that's unfair. That's unfair. Don't go hide and throw bricks. I agree.
Exactly. So I think my goal is to have the comment section active on the behind the wall, so to speak.
Yeah,
In the front end, not so much.
I love it. I love it.
Just this week, we received a couple of comments from disgruntled patients calling out specific surgeons, and
That's
and
no. I
so
don't like no.
so that part, I don't think they
No,
made it to
that's
the
not
live
helpful.
site, but
That's not helpful.
no, not helpful. Exactly. So, but anyway, there was some of the things that we're just thinking through, and we love to hear from people too. They have ideas.
So, all right. I was not going to say this, but since you opened up the door, Drue.
Bring it.
So over the weekend, I'm exercising, and my mind is I'm mulling over why is it that Zimmer Biomet is always cheaper than Stryker? If you want to buy a Stryker stock, you got to pay $40 for every $1 Stryker's earnings. But you can buy Zimmer for $20 for every $1, half the price. Why is that? It's been that way for 20 years. So I'm just mulling this. I'm meditating on this. And my phone pings, and I look down, and there's a photo of Ivan Tornos with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So Arnold is standing there in the photo with a cigar, Hawaiian shirt, and shorts on. Ivan is standing there in orange, not blue, not black, orange lederhosen with Brooks Brothers socks. So if you wear lederhosen, you're supposed to wear the long socks up. He's got these Brooks Brothers socks that stop at the top of the ankle.
Faux pas?
Huh?
Faux pas?
I'm looking at this photo and I'm going, okay, who's the show horse and who's the workhorse? I can't help myself. I mean, I was meditating and I looked at this picture. It interrupted my deep breathing. I'm like, what? WTF? This guy's running Zimmer? And I'm thinking, maybe I know why Zimmer's cheaper than Stryker. I mean, would Kevin Lobos do this? So, no offense, Ivan's great. I've been recommending Zimmer on my power rankings now consistently. They're way undervalued. They're worth a whole lot more than people are paying for it. I don't put Stryker up there because it's too expensive because I'm a cheap bastard. Remember, I want to buy dollars for 40 cents.
Right.
You
right.
buy low, right? Anyway, so sorry for getting off on
No, I love it.
Ivan's sartorial choices, but I would just say, Ivan, I'll give you some advice. Don't wear burnt orange lederhosen anymore. You run a valuable company. Show that you're all business. Doesn't mean you have to be dull, but what surgeons do with patients is important. and not trivial.
Huh.
Reflect that. Okay.
Yeah.
I
No, I
digress.
think that's good advice.
I-
I do.
All right.
Uh,
Thank
well,
you, Drew. Yes.
I I had a train of thought that I just lost, but that the orange lederhosen I think was probably more than my brain could contain.
You know, we should put the picture on OTW just to make the point.
I think that makes sense.
I will.
You're gonna write a piece about it, right?
I already did.
Oh, okay, good.
I was hesitating though. I didn't. I don't want anyone to take it as a real criticism. It's not. It's just like, really, seriously.
Yeah.
You know, this is. You want to? Is this your image?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. By the way, you brought up power rankings, and that's something that I think is really underappreciated on this platform. Something that you do a great job with, and I don't know how you do it, and I'm not going to ask for your secrets today, but
okay, Drue, let me ask you a question, and you can edit this out. I track this track record of those power rankings. We beat the S&P 500 handily.
Really?
I mean, if you invested in the power rankings over time, you'd make 4 times what the S&P did.
Really? Would you say the top 3, the top 5, all 10?
All 10. Do the 10. Stagger your investment. So the number 1 gets the most money. The number 10 gets the least.
Okay.
And if it moves, you sell or you buy based on where it is on the ranking.
Okay.
I mean, seriously, you make a lot of money. And so the question is, do we set up an investment fund based on the power rankings? So it'd be like, you can invest as little as $100 or 100,000.
So you're saying start a fund?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's talk about that. The OTW fund.
Let's talk about that. I like
the
that.
OTW fund.
I like it. You have your CRP.
It's all very public. Power rankings are published. You can see what we're buying or selling.
Okay.
All transparent.
So that's good. Actually, I'm encouraged to hear this because I wanted to ask you that you're going to continue to provide these power rankings into the future because
until my boss says cut it out.
Okay. Fair point. All right. I think you heard it here. That's great. All right. So you don't have to wait for us to create the fund. You can start making the investments now on your own. They're all public, or most of them are public, right? Are they all public?
Yeah.
Power rankings?
Only, because you got to be able to buy and sell. So it's only public. That's
great.
That's all you can do.
Well, Robin, is there anything else that you think you'd like to share with the community?
Other than just say that you're the best, and I really appreciate what you're doing. And I think OTW is so much better now that you're in charge, and I appreciate it so much.
Well, you're very gracious to say that. So thank you for that. Thank you for joining me today on your vacation. And listen, may 2025 be your best year yet. That's my prayer.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Take care.
You too.
God bless.
Bye.
Bye-bye.